Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive. You know, we always say the best way to grow is to go deep. And today we're going deep on ditching those bad habits.
Yeah, and I think this is going to resonate with a lot of our listeners because I know we've all got those habits that we wish we could just kick to the curb, right?
Absolutely. And sometimes it's hard to even realize what those habits are. You know, they're like these little sneaky saboteurs that are holding us back without us even realizing it.
So true. So today we're going to take a look at this video about a guy named Jeremy who totally transformed his life at 40 by ditching 9 specific habits.
And what I love about Jeremy's story is that it's not about some crazy, complicated self-improvement plan. It's really about simplifying things, getting rid of the stuff that's weighing us down.
Yeah, it's like decluttering your life, but for bad habits. And his story is super inspiring, so we're going to unpack each of these habits one by one and see what we can learn from his experience.
Sounds good. Let's jump in. So habit number 1 is all about giving up an unhealthy lifestyle.
Right. Jeremy was in a pretty bad place when he started this journey. He was unhappy, unhealthy, and feeling totally stuck.
Kind of like a midlife crisis, but without the sports car.
Exactly. And what's interesting is that he recognized that his physical health was a huge part of the problem. You know, he actually describes himself as a walking disaster, which is pretty harsh, but also kind of funny.
I can relate, though. It's easy to let things slide, especially when you're busy with work and family.
Totally. And for Jeremy, that meant a lot of junk food, no exercise, and barely any sleep. So he decided to prioritize his health as the foundation for everything else.
So what did that look like in practice?
He started exercising regularly, cut out all the sugary drinks and processed food, and even became more mindful of the types of fats he was consuming. He was really focused on giving his body the nutrients it needed.
That's pretty impressive. It sounds like a complete 180 from his old habits.
It was. And the key takeaway here is that he understood the mind-body connection. When you take care of your physical health, everything else starts to fall into place. You have more energy, you're more focused, you're just in a better state overall.
I can see how that would make a huge difference.
Oh,
So habit number 2 is giving up short-term thinking.
right. And this is a big one because it's so easy to get caught up in the instant gratification trap.
Oh, tell me about it. I'm the queen of procrastination.
We all do it to some extent. But the thing is, short-term thinking can have serious long-term consequences, and Jeremy learned that the hard way. The video tells the story about how he had a chance to take a job that would have been amazing for his career long-term, but it paid a little less than a factory job he was offered.
Ugh, so he chose the quick cash over the long-term potential.
Exactly. And 20 years later, he's still at that factory job feeling stuck and full of regret.
Ouch. That's a tough lesson to learn.
It is, but it's a reminder that we need to be more intentional about our choices and think about the long-term consequences of our actions.
I think that's something a lot of people in their 30s, 40s, and 50s can relate to. You start to realize that those choices you made in your 20s have a real impact on where you are today.
It's never too late to course correct, though. The key is to start thinking about what you want your life to look like 5, 10, 20 years from now, and then make choices that align with that vision.
I like that. Okay, so moving on to habit number 3, giving up on playing small.
This one's all about embracing your full potential and not letting fear hold you back.
And Jeremy has a really interesting perspective on this because he grew up in an environment where dreaming big was actually discouraged.
His parents were very much of the keep your head down and just get by mentality.
Wow, so he had to unlearn that whole mindset.
Exactly. And what's cool is that he found inspiration in that famous Marianne Williamson quote, "Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure."
That's so true. That we're often afraid of our own greatness.
And that fear can manifest in so many ways. Fear of failure, fear of judgment, even fear of success. Because what if we actually achieve our dreams and then we have to deal with all the responsibility and expectations that come with that?
That's a whole other level of fear, right?
Totally. But the key takeaway here is that we need to shift our perspective on fear. Instead of seeing it as a stop sign, we need to see it as a signpost pointing us towards growth.
I love that. So instead of asking ourselves, what if I fail? We should be asking, what if I succeed?
Exactly. And when we embrace that possibility, amazing things can happen.
Okay, so habit number 4 is giving up excuses.
This one's all about taking responsibility for your life and not blaming your circumstances for why you're not where you want to be.
It's easy to fall into the trap of making excuses, though.
Yeah.
It's like a defense mechanism to protect our ego.
Totally. But the thing is, excuses keep us stuck. They prevent us from taking action and creating the life we want.
And what's interesting about Jeremy's story is that he realized this by looking at his friends. He had friends from similar backgrounds who achieved significant success while he was still making excuses.
It was a wake-up call for him. He realized that it wasn't about privilege or luck. It was about mindset and taking ownership.
So what are some of the most common excuses people use?
Oh, there are so many. I don't have enough time. I'm not talented enough. I'm too old. It's a never-ending list.
And how do we dismantle those excuses?
It starts with recognizing that they're just thoughts. They're not facts. And we have the power to choose different thoughts. We can choose to focus on what we can control instead of what we can't.
So instead of saying, I don't have enough time, we could say, I'm going to make time for this because it's important to me.
Exactly. It's about shifting our language and our mindset.
I like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've covered 4 habits so far: prioritizing our health, overcoming short-term thinking, embracing our potential, and ditching excuses. But we're just getting started. Let's dive into habit number 5, giving up the need to control everything.
Okay. This one's definitely a challenge for me. I'm a bit of a control freak by nature.
I think we all have those tendencies to some extent, especially as we get older and have more responsibilities. You want to make sure everything's running smoothly.
Exactly. And the video actually shares this funny anecdote about how Jeremy got a flat tire on his way to a dentist appointment and ended up canceling the whole thing and spending the rest of the day fuming about it.
Oh man, I've been there. It's like that feeling of why me when something unexpected happens and throws off your whole schedule.
Totally.
But what Jeremy realized is that all that frustration and anger wasn't actually helping the situation. It was just creating more stress.
And that's where the Stoic philosophy comes in. Have you ever heard of that?
I've heard the term, but I'm not really sure what it's all about.
Basically, the Stoics believed that true peace comes from accepting what we cannot control.
So it's about choosing our battles wisely.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that there are certain things in life that we simply can't change, like the weather, traffic, other people's opinions.
And instead of wasting our energy trying to control those things, we should focus on what we can control, like our own thoughts and actions.
Exactly. It's not about being passive or giving up. It's about being strategic with your energy.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, so moving on to habit number 6, giving up toxic relationships.
This one's all about recognizing the impact that the people we surround ourselves with have on our well-being.
And this is something that Jeremy really struggled with. He had a group of friends that he'd known since childhood, but their gatherings always revolved around complaining and negativity.
Oof, that sounds draining.
It was. And what's interesting is that he didn't even realize how much it was affecting him until he started spending more time with people who were more positive and supportive.
It's amazing how much of a difference our social circle can make. We tend to absorb the energy of the people we spend the most time with.
It's like that saying, you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with.
Exactly. So if you're constantly surrounded by negative people, it's going to be much harder to maintain a positive outlook yourself.
Okay, so how do we know if a relationship is toxic? What are some red flags to watch out for?
Pay attention to how you feel after spending time with someone. Do you feel energized and uplifted, or drained and depleted? Do you feel supported and encouraged, or criticized and judged?
So basically, if you feel like you need to take a nap after hanging out with someone, that's probably not a good sign.
Probably not. And it's not about being judgmental or cutting people out of your life who are going through a tough time. We all have our ups and downs, but it's about recognizing the patterns in your relationships and making conscious choices about who you allow into your inner circle.
Okay, so moving on to habit number 7, giving up the need to be liked.
This one's all about learning to value your own opinion and make choices that align with your own values, even if it means not everyone will agree with you.
I think this is a struggle for a lot of people. We all want to be liked and accepted.
It's a natural human desire. But the problem is that when we're constantly seeking approval from others, we end up betraying ourselves.
We become people pleasers instead of authentically living our own lives.
Exactly. And Jeremy actually traces this pattern back to his childhood. He mentions that he craved validation as a child because he felt like he didn't get enough attention and approval from his parents.
So pleasing others became a way to cope with that feeling of inadequacy.
Right. And that pattern can carry over into adulthood, leading to a constant need for external validation.
So how do we break free from that need for approval? How do we learn to trust our own inner compass?
It starts with self-awareness. Notice the times when you're making decisions based on what other people will think. Ask yourself, what do I truly want? What feels authentic to me?
It's about shifting our focus from external validation to internal validation.
Exactly. And it's about remembering that you can't please everyone. No matter what you do, someone's always going to have an opinion.
So you might as well do what feels right for you.
Exactly. Okay, so moving on to habit number 8, conquering procrastination and distractions.
Oh, this is a big one for me. I'm a master procrastinator.
We all do it to some extent. But the thing is, procrastination robs us of our time and energy and prevents us from achieving our goals.
And it's often fueled by fear, right?
Yeah.
Fear of failure,
Or
fear of success, fear of the unknown.
Absolutely. And for Jeremy, procrastination often manifested as excessive social media use. Scrolling and scrolling and scrolling instead of focusing on the things that really mattered.
I can relate to that. It's so easy to get sucked into the vortex of social media.
It is. But the key is to become more mindful of how we're spending our time and energy. Are we using our time to create the life we want, or are we just wasting it on distractions?
So how do we break free from the procrastination trap?
It starts with understanding the root cause. Why are we procrastinating? What are we afraid of? Once we understand the why behind our behavior, we can start to develop strategies to overcome it.
So it's about being more self-aware and then taking action to address the underlying issues.
Exactly. And there are lots of practical tips and techniques that can help, like breaking down tasks into smaller chunks, setting realistic deadlines, eliminating distractions, finding an accountability partner.
It's about creating a system that supports our success rather than setting ourselves up for failure.
Exactly. So we're back, and I don't know about you, but I'm feeling pretty inspired after diving into those 8 habits with Jeremy.
Me too. It's amazing how much we can learn from someone else's journey of self-discovery. It's like looking in a mirror sometime.
For sure. And speaking of mirrors, the last habit Jeremy talks about is kind of meta. It's about giving up on the need to compare ourselves to others.
Okay, so no more keeping up with the Joneses.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that everyone's on their own unique path, and that comparison is ultimately a thief of joy. It's like that Teddy Roosevelt quote, "Comparison is the thief of joy."
So true. It's so easy to get caught up in that trap of looking at what other people have or what they're doing and feeling like we're not enough.
Especially in today's world, with social media constantly bombarding us with these curated versions of people's lives.
It's like a highlight reel of everyone else's best moments.
Exactly. And we end up comparing our behind the scenes to everyone else's highlight reel, which is a recipe for feeling inadequate.
Ugh, it's so toxic.
Yeah.
But how do we break free from that comparison trap?
It starts with gratitude.
Yeah.
Focusing on what we do have and what's good in our own lives.
So instead of looking at what other people have and feeling envious, we should be appreciating what we already have.
Exactly. And it's also about recognizing that everyone has their own strengths and weaknesses. There's no one out there who's perfect at everything.
It's about embracing our own uniqueness.
Exactly. And celebrating the diversity of human experience.
I love that.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the 9 habits that transformed Jeremy's life, what's your biggest takeaway?
What struck me most is that it's not about achieving some unattainable ideal of perfection. It's about progress. It's about showing up for yourself each day and striving to be a little bit better than you were yesterday.
I like that. It's about embracing the journey, not just the destination.
Exactly. And remembering that personal growth is a lifelong process. There's always going to be room for improvement.
So as we leave our listeners today, what's one final piece of advice you'd like to share?
I'd encourage everyone to pick one of these 9 habits that really resonates with you and make a commitment to work on it for the next week or month. Just see what happens when you start to shift your mindset and your behavior.
That's a great challenge. And remember, you don't have to do it alone. We're all in this together, figuring things out, stumbling, growing, and evolving.
Exactly. So let's support each other, share our insights and experiences, and continue this conversation about personal growth both on and off the show.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep seeking, keep exploring, and keep evolving.